This episode is brought to you by Encore Business Group, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Williams Chiropractic, Elite Winning Solutions, and Sal's Complete Home Painting and Handyman Services. Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ron Walsh airs live Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Happy you could join us on Thanksgiving here. Thankful you could join us on Thanksgiving. I know the game probably wasn't what you were hoping for if you're a Lions fan here. Dan's shaking his head. He's in studio with me. Mom's here. She made it through the traffic, and we're all getting prepped for the Thanksgiving draft here. Shayne's not here yet. He'll be en route, I think, and then we got a little schedule change. We'll do Ryan Mathews at 7:15, and then likely we'll do the Thanksgiving draft at 8 with the five of us: Dan, Mom, myself, Shayne, and Jacob Westendorf of Packers on SI, and then we'll do that during his interview segment, which he'll probably be pretty happy about, given that the Packers won. Dan's, I think, watching the this is Cowboys Chiefs right now, right, Dan?
Yes, it is Cowboys Chiefs.
Yeah. So how's that game going? I didn't see that on the way in.
Cowboys are up 20-14.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you brought this up earlier, Dan. The Cowboys are an interesting team to me because I don't know what to make of them, but now they seem kind of, at first it was kind of a scheduled win for the Lions, and now it's like, oh, these guys are kind of scary on a Thursday after this loss.
They're playing the Chiefs stuff. They came back against the Eagles. I mean, to me, I thought the game against the Raiders a couple of weeks ago was going to be a shootout, and they just destroyed the Raiders. So I'm a little worried. They
seem to have come into form. The trades and the moves they've made seem to have worked out in at least the short term. Pickens obviously has worked out. I don't know if that's going to work out long term. That seems doomed to fail at some point in time, but maybe not this year, just eventually. But we'll see how that works. But he's obviously very talented. Javonte Williams has been really the key acquisition for them. He's been very solid as a running back, and then you highlighted the defensive acquisitions too.
Yeah. The trading, I mean, like, they're playing the run much better, and they went out and got more at the deadline. I just think they look like a different team than the one who was playing like 40 to 40 shootouts all at the beginning of the year.
Well, obviously, so the two teams that the Lions play back to back, the Packers and the Cowboys, they had a key trade at the beginning of the season, and everybody was looking at that from the Packers' perspective because they got the big player, they got the game-changing player who changed the game today. Micah Parsons played very well. Yes. He, probably without him, maybe he doesn't win, but maybe they don't win. But it's you got to analyze the Cowboys side of this, where they have they traded him to get a defensive tackle, and they got all those picks, and now they also increase and get another defensive tackle in Quinnen Williams. They've then solidified the interior of that defensive line, and between all that, I feel like that has really solidified this defense, because you're right, Dan, that was something where at the beginning of the season they weren't able to stop anybody, but now that the defensive line is stout in the middle, now they're looking pretty good.
100% agree. Like, I'm worried. The Lions need to basically win out, I think, to make the playoffs. And I think next week might be a play-in game, essentially. Whoever wins that game will get probably the last playoff spot.
Which is kind of crazy that we're at that point, but and then the North is going to be tough all the way out. Their schedule's tough all the way out. I think last I looked, before the Packers game, I think they were top 5-ish in schedule strength remaining. So between all those things, it's that's going to be a tough one, and we'll have to see what happens here with the Cowboys. They'll both have a week's rest because the Cowboys obviously will have played on Thursday too. So it'll be an interesting matchup. We'll have Aiden Davis on next week to preview it right before the game, and then he'll review it with us after the game. He covered the Cowboys for us last year. That was a very sad game last year, but I don't think it's going to be like that this year.
That was 2 years ago you're thinking of, right?
No, well, I'm thinking sad for the Cowboys side.
For the Cowboys.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was sad in that I think that was the game that Hutchinson got hurt in. That was the only thing that was sad for the Lions. It was a blowout otherwise, but it was kind of tough to cover it with Aiden in general. But I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be a tough.
I think it'll be
tough
similar
matchup
to today, but hopefully we can be on the other end where the Cowboys are trying to catch back up.
It will be more similar to that game 2 years ago that you're talking about, which was the skipper.
Yeah, and didn't check it.
Yeah. Which now he's the most infamous sixth lineman, I think, in the league, really.
Probably.
That'll be interesting to watch. But yeah, we'll talk about the Lions side of things here at 7:15 with Ryan Mathews, and then the Packers side of things at 8. But I have Shayne just arrived. He's working his way into the studio here. We had to pull him away from the parties. Hopefully we didn't do any damage with the family or anything. Hopefully we're not in trouble.
No, we're good.
I'm not in trouble with Sammy, am I?
No, we're good.
Okay,
we're good.
Okay, that's good. I haven't even met her yet, so I don't want to be in trouble with her already. But I had so we usually started out with kind of the thing of the day, and obviously we're going to do the Thanksgiving draft, so that's going to cover that. But I had a random thing that popped into my head on the way here that this will kind of replace the thing of the day. I'm wondering when you guys start listening to Christmas music, because that's a volatile issue. And I don't know if that's Shayne's got either he doesn't like my question or this is a hot button issue.
I wouldn't say hot button, but it's a button. Let's just say when we finish trick-or-treating, the music comes on.
Okay.
The boxes come out of storage. And you know what? I say it as I'm joking because my wife loves Christmas and all the stuff comes out. But I get into it. You know, I enjoy it. And I know it makes her happy as well. So, you know, when I get into it, she's happier. We're all happier. Happy wife, happy life. November 1st.
I feel like I'm getting you into more trouble here, though. We gotta tread carefully here. I've already pulled you away from Thanksgiving festivities. Now we're kind of in volatile territory with when to start. But that's the big question. I feel like it's either after Halloween or after Thanksgiving. Those are the two obvious answers for me.
Well, you know, and we were at family's house just now earlier today, and they had no Christmas things up. So I was like, hey, and we have Christmas at their house as well. So I was like, hey, when do you guys put your stuff up? They're like, yeah, they'll start coming out right about now. And honestly, growing up, everything was after Thanksgiving. That's just how it was. And honestly, into December. It wasn't even like in November yet. So it was a little bit of a joke. We talked about it then. So I'm not getting in any hot water that I'm not freely open to talk about. But, you know, I'll admit, like, I get into it. You know, we kind of go all out. We have probably 7 full-size Christmas trees up in our house.
In different, are they in different rooms? Is that what's the placement
we have
of these?
The main tree.
Okay.
And then we have like a sunroom that has like a pit couch in it, and we have 2 like tall skinny trees on each side of the couch.
Oh, okay.
In the corner.
Synergy there.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we have like a tree at the top of the stairs. Then we have a tree in the bedroom. Then we have a tree in the office. And then downstairs in the basement, we have what we call the eclectic tree. So it's like a tree that has like all the ornaments that from my childhood and her childhood. Nice. And we put like the, you know, instead of like the, you know, the super themey white everywhere type lights upstairs, it has all the bright lights on it and kind of gives us the feel of like our childhood.
Okay.
And then we kind of have a little bit more like, if you want to call it tacky, Christmas decor downstairs in the basement.
Okay.
But upstairs, it's all white lights. Everything's, you know, there's only red and silver ornaments, and everything matches a theme. All the garland has to be the same shade of green.
Okay.
All that kind of stuff. It's thorough. It's thorough. I'll say that.
You guys are into this. I'm now starting a Christmas discussion on Thanksgiving, which I don't know how I feel about that. But but now I want to ask you a follow-up Christmas question. How do we feel about Christmas sweaters? I like that there's a lot more available, but they are kind of ridiculous in a way.
Yeah, they do get ridiculous, and I would be a liar if I said I have not partaken in ordering from some of these websites where you can get some really ridiculous I wish I could remember the name off the top of my head. There's a website where you can get just the silliest, ugly sweater type stuff. And some of them, might be a little over the top as far as maybe a little PG-13.
Right.
Some of them are cute, whatever. We're having a Christmas party in a couple weeks, and we have some people that are going to probably do the whole ugly sweater look.
Okay.
I tend to tell people, hey, this is like our one time of the year. Like, let's make it, black tie optional. So I wear a tuxedo.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And my thing is a tacky vest.
Okay.
And tie and pocket square and all that.
Okay.
But that's my substitute for the ugly sweater.
I like it. Okay, so you're going like bad prom tux with the vest. I like it. Dan clicked his mic on. This seems like something he would know about.
Well, I do like the ugly sweater. I wanted to follow up on the Christmas decorating on the other end.
Okay.
When does it come down?
Oh, boy.
Because I'm of the later decorating tradition my wife likes earlier, but I like to keep it up longer.
Yeah.
So I always say January 1 or 2 comes down, but she wants to take it down like the day after Christmas.
Oh, January 1 or 2 doesn't even seem like that late to me. Maybe that's my own opinion, but
I was going to say that's late.
I mean, she wants to take it down the day after Christmas, so.
I think ours came down in late January or February.
Yeah, see, I could see that going to a new month. That's,
Okay.
February. Well, because I know you said, Shayne, that you guys are big into the Halloween decorations too, and I feel like those periods are expanding. Like the people that are into Halloween, like they just have it up longer now, and you see that for longer. Same with Christmas. It's like if you're a Christmas person, then I could see having it up for longer.
For sure, yeah. And honestly, the only other holiday where we do any type of decorating type stuff for it would be St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
We usually have a St. Patrick's Day party because we don't really, we're not really into the whole going out to the pubs and doing all that on St. Patrick's Day. So we tend to, have a few little things with green, and everybody wears green, and there's some shamrock thingies around the house and the tablecloth or whatever. Other than that, that's it. I mean, we don't, really no other decor comes up for anything else. So I think where you have all these social influencers, that also, quote unquote, influences some people's mindset on some of these things, because you see these people that, have really nice houses and they're decorating them. So I think that inspires people to do it more, and where to get the resources to find the decor and all that kind of stuff. I think that plays into it probably a little more, and people are a little more aware because they're seeing these things on Instagram and TikTok and all that as well.
That's a good point. I think there is something that's kind of keeping up with the Joneses to a degree, where, okay, my neighbor is doing this, or I'm seeing this online, whatever it is. So yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm the type that I don't even usually put something up because I just don't really take the time to do it. But I have great ornaments that have been given to me by my mom, my grandmother, family members. So I want to try to get those up. But I'll have like a small, like Charlie Brown style tree. I won't have 7 trees like you, Shayne. I'll pale in comparison.
Well, hey, my college apartment, we had a tree that had beer cans hanging on it.
There you go.
So it is what it is.
'Tis the season.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Well, I bet you didn't bargain for a Christmas discussion on Thanksgiving, but hey, we're doing a show on Thanksgiving, and that's what we ended up with. Good discussion, and we'll be following back up on that because there's some other good topics there. But for now, we'll take a break quick, and then we'll bring Ryan Mathews on of Pride of Detroit and see how his day is going. I'm imagining not great. He's not going to participate in the Thanksgiving draft, but we'll check in on his dinner and how he's doing here. But stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. We're happy to bring on this next guest. He's been a frequent guest on Sports in Football with us. I imagine he's maybe not very happy with the result of the game, but I'm curious how your Thanksgiving meal was. Hopefully that was at least good, Ryan.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on, Ryan. Happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Yeah, thank you. It was good. It was great. Just taking a step out here to talk some Lions football with you guys.
Nice. What did you? So we're doing a Thanksgiving food draft later, and I want to know what would kind of be your ideal if you were to draft. It kind of put together a main, a couple sides, a dessert. What are you picking there? Because basically, with our teams have to be a main, 2 sides, a dessert, and then we wanted a football element, so it would be a play-by-play and analyst, play-by-play person and analyst, that living or dead. It could be, Madden and Summerall, whatever, to listen to for your Thanksgiving game.
Oh, wow.
I know I'm putting you on the spot here, so you can have a little time to think about it too.
No, I think I can roll with it. I would go ham. I do appreciate the turkey, but I think I'd go ham for my main if I can do that, if I'm allowed. Is that sacrilege on Thanksgiving or not?
No, it's one of the options we have. So I have it all drawn out because we had to have set options. So the main options are turkey, ham, steak, lamb, and Shayne had a good argument that you got to have one that's maybe less desirable. So we have like a hot dog or a sausage, something that, like, if you don't pick it for a while, then you're just going to end up with hot dogs.
Gotcha. Okay, no turducken though, huh? Interesting. All right. Well, I'll go ham for my 2 sides. I mean, without question, one of them is going to be green bean casserole. Green bean casserole is just top tier, elite tier Thanksgiving Day food. So, and you can't go wrong with if this is the plate though, I think I got to balance it out. Normally, I would go dressing or stuffing, but I think I'd go mashed potatoes. It's a staple. So I go mashed potatoes and green bean casserole, and for the dessert, it's got to be a lattice apple pie. Could I get a scoop of ice cream with that too, Brian?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to, but you got to heat up the pie first. Now,
absolutely.
Now, this is a very volatile issue here. We're not putting cheese on this pie, are we? On the apple pie? I know there's some people that put cheese on the pie.
I've never heard of that.
You haven't heard of this? Hey, I don't do it. I'm not saying this from experience. Shayne's looking at me like, don't talk about this.
I also never heard of cheese curds until I moved to Michigan.
Oh, okay. So. Yeah.
Didn't the cheese on the pie come from like a famous movie? Wasn't that like?
Was that where it came from?
De Niro in the one in New York where he plans to assassinate somebody. I can't never remember. It's a classic one.
That's not Taxi Driver, is it?
I thought it was.
The Taxi. I mean, that sounds a lot like Taxi Driver. I don't remember that. But
I thought he was in a diner.
I will.
Interesting. Go ahead, Ryan. Yeah.
No, I was going to say the last thing I want to talk about is cheese with you guys right now after what happened earlier today. But
I know, yeah, we're not putting any cheese on anything by virtue of that game. That's I saw during the game. Did you see that guy that had the blue cheese head?
I did not.
It was like shaped like a cheese head. But it was blue. Yeah. It was Honolulu blue. I don't know about that, Shayne. I don't know what we're doing with that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is either. I know some. I've been in certain stadiums when we've played against Green Bay. I've played for quite a few teams, but and I've seen kind of the counter hat to go with that cheese head hat. Never saw a blue cheese. That's interesting.
That was the first one I saw, and I saw it towards the end of the broadcast, and I was like, that seems odd. I feel like the marketing wouldn't really work for Lions fans there. But yeah, you're right about that, Ryan. I don't know a lot of people that do it, but I've heard people bring up the whole cheese on apple pie. So I was just making sure that that's not sandwiched in between the pie and the ice cream for you.
Yeah, nope. Thanks for the asking of clarification, but absolutely not. Like you said, though, I think it's really important. If you're going to have it with ice cream, the best way to do it is to microwave that pie 15, 20 seconds, little ice cream, vanilla bean, if I can get specific. I mean, that sounds great right now.
Nice.
I go back in for a piece after the spot.
I was going to say, is that what you're having? I would imagine all those things are pretty doable.
Yeah, I don't know if we got ice cream, but we got key lime pie in there, and that's a close second for me too.
Oh, okay. We don't have that on our dessert list. I wouldn't think of that as a Thanksgiving dessert. It's a good dessert, but I don't know that
it is one of my favorites as well.
Okay,
but it's never been something I've ever seen on the Thanksgiving table.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what season that would be. It would be more like a summery dessert for me, I think.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
But have it any time of year. I don't think we need to restrict it. Just go for it. You like it, have it. So what about the play-by-play and the analyst here? I'm curious of this answer because you watch a lot of football, like we all do here, Ryan, and I'm curious who you would like for that one.
Yeah, part of me for nostalgia wants to say Summerall and Madden, but I'm going to go Al Michaels and John Madden. I think the little bit of John Madden and Al Michaels that we got, I mean, can you do much better than that? I don't know.
I like that pairing. I'm a big Michaels fan. I mean, he's still continued to be pretty good even as he's aged here, and I think he's kind of stayed a little underrated now, especially shifting the prime and being on Thursdays and not necessarily being in the limelight quite as much. And then obviously Madden, you really can't compare to him at all. So yeah, I like that combo. Those are all good choices. Green bean casserole is the one that I never really specifically got into. My family didn't really make it, but I feel like that's a popular choice. I'm hearing that come up a lot.
Yeah, when it's done right, when it's done well, it's the perfect pairing. Perfect pairing for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, hopefully you can get all of those options here. We want to get your takes a little bit on the Lions game because I know it wasn't the result that any of us on the Michigan side, on the Detroit side, wanted. But it was an interesting game overall. That one of the things that continues, because I think in some of our past interviews we've talked about the aggression, and I think we had an interview during that time frame where Campbell was getting criticized for, it was like when everything was rolling and he was getting criticized for going for it on fourth down, but it was a very odd period to criticize him because he was doing unquestionably very well. The success rate was so good, but they were like, well, he's being too aggressive. And it was like, but the results are not even, I mean, they're way above any estimate that you would have for this. Now, the last couple weeks, it seemed like, and I'm not playing the result so much or saying like, hey, he shouldn't do it now. But that was an interesting juxtaposition because if I'm thinking of a guy that is not very aggressive, one of the first guys I think of is LaFleur. And so he became very aggressive. Campbell tried to be aggressive, and which he normally is, but LaFleur got the better of that aggression here for at least this game, and that was just an interesting storyline to me.
Yeah, one team executed on fourth down and the other didn't. I think that has been the tail of the tape going back to the Philadelphia game, right? I mean, if the Lions don't go 0 for 5 on fourth down, is there a different result to that game? Very well could have been. I think today, kind of, Ryan, to your point, I think last year with the defense being in the spot that it was in, it made sense for the offense to be on the field. Be aggressive. Keep the best side of your football team out on the field as much as you possibly can. Give the other side a little bit of help with some points. I think today, obviously, when you're down 10 at that spot that he was in, really unfortunate that J-Mo doesn't catch that pass. And also, I think Goff has to deliver a better ball. I know he talked about it in the post-game press conference, and I think Brady even mentioned it on the broadcast. If he just puts that ahead of Jameson Williams, it's probably going for 6. So it comes back to execution, but I do think it's fair to at least question Dan Campbell, in the Eagles game more so because it felt like the defense was firing. It felt like the Eagles offense was struggling to gain a lot of yards. Detroit's defense played big in spots. And, if you think you don't go for the fake punt at midfield in the Eagles game, well, yeah, punt it away and let your defense play. Defense wasn't playing so great today. So, maybe that factored into Campbell's decision making where, we're down 10. I'd like to score a touchdown now because, if we do hold them or if we do hold Green Bay to a field goal, well, then we can go down and we can try to play for a touchdown on the win and get out of here. But, I don't want to get caught up too much in the result is how I'm going to feel about it. I want to think about the process. And I think the process still bears out for the most part. It's just a failure of execution. And that's kind of been the tail of the tape on fourth down this year for the Lions.
One thing that occurred to me, because I want to ask Shayne this, because, Campbell already wears a lot of hats in this organization. Now he's taken over the play calling, and then, you have to then worry about the end of half, end of quarter, end of game scenarios. And I'm I'm wondering how you've seen this change of him to offensive coordinator, because I'm sure you've had different scenarios on the teams you played with, but it is taking on more responsibility. And even if you have a big staff, I don't know how you delegate those things out. Like, it'd be hard to say, like, was there ever coaches that like specialized in, okay, yeah, I need you to kind of key me in on when we need to take a timeout? I mean, that's a classic head coach decision. I'm sure guys like Belichick definitely did that himself, but I'm not sure how much you can delegate if you're now taking over the offensive coordinator duties, the play calling duties. It would probably be hard to delegate some of those other things to get something off of his plate.
So those things are definitely delegated, but also his decision. So it's not like there's someone that his job is to do that and he's got to tell him to do it. He knows. In fact, you see that call sheet they hold up. They usually cover their face with it when they talk into the microphone and all that. So that's going to have all of their different scenario play calling. Like, there's all these boxes inside of that sheet. If you can ever see what's on it, it is tiny font. It's hey, on third down against this look, these are the plays we're going to call. In this situation, these are the plays we want to call based on the tendencies and all their scouting reports of the build up to that game. In the corner is a little box that has situational scenarios on it. It has everything from, if we're down by this much with this much time left, go for two. If we're this, that, like it has all these little scenarios on it. I'm willing to bet every team I've ever been with in college has that when I coached, and I would make those call sheets that I would hand out to certain guys that weren't necessarily on the full staff. But you need people to help co-sign, and every now and then something slips someone's mind. You're going to have a coach, whether they're up in the booth, whether they're down on the field, like, hey, coach, we should probably call a timeout right now. It's not like that timeout slipped their minds. I feel like when that happens, either it's a total breakdown and everyone forgot about it, or no one thought about it, one or the other, or it just, you know what, I'm going to go with my gut and do this instead. And you never know what it truly is. As fans, we're kind of looking at it relaxed, nothing on the line. We can make our decisions and make our observations, and we can say, oh, I would have done this. Okay, yeah, but would we have been able to make any other of these decisions that have to happen on the fly within 10 seconds or you're going to get fired type stuff? So that really plays into it. I do think that I've seen some of the best coaches over time make some horrendous time management decisions. I mean, I remember watching Mac Brown when he had been one of the greatest coaches in college. He had gone from Texas. He had went back to North Carolina, where he had coached early in his career. And I remember watching some of the worst time management decisions at the end of a game, and I'm like, how does that happen? It doesn't happen without a breakdown along the chain of command. And it's not that it was all his fault. There were other people that are there to co-sign and to remind and be in their ear that also may have failed in their job to do that as well. Or, no, in those situations, those were just blunders. But sometimes those things happen. And I think in this situation, it could have been he had a gut feeling towards something else. I don't know. But also, somebody should have been in his ear saying something if he didn't make that decision himself and he was distracted.
Well, and you brought up a good point, because we talked about this last week some, with the idea that of the play calls going into the quarterback, and you have a limited amount of time to get that in before they get cut off. It's the same thing here. Everything gets slowed down for us. We get to see the replay. We get to take our breaks and go to the bathroom and eat food during the game. They're not doing any of that. They're having to process so much information during the game, and that's a lot different scenario to then also process that.
Yeah, and let's also remember there's another guy that has what they call the book, and this is the analytics guy, and the book has all these scenarios and all these things in it, from when to go forward on fourth down, when to kick a field goal instead of go for a touchdown if you need 2 scores. All these different situations that they have. There's a guy that is flipping through this book, and there's a million tabs in it, and the book is different every week. And that person is also on the headset, and he's saying, "Hey, in this situation, we should probably do this," and then they're done. Then the decision's up to the coach after that. That guy plays into it too. I don't know how that plays into this situation per se, but there's also that guy, the analytics guy.
And I'm glad you brought that up about the analytics piece, because that's a piece that's always interested me about Dan Campbell, because I think he gets a reputation as a gut guy, and I think he is, but he also has a very good feel for the game. And Ryan, that's kind of how I saw this with the play calls. I've always been pro aggression. I think it's worked, and you can't then change. It'd be very sports radio of me to say, "Oh, well, I liked it when it worked, and then I don't like it now that it didn't work." You have to live with the ups and downs if you're going to go with it. So it wasn't so much the aggressiveness. It just seems like they're being so conservative on some of those fourth down calls, because the Eagles game you cited, and then he did it a couple times today, right up the gut in that stiff defensive line against both the Eagles, which was an even tougher proposition, and Green Bay. It just seemed like they were a little bit more creative previously about kind of getting that, countering what you would traditionally think they might do, and having maybe not a gadget play. Sometimes it was a gadget play, but something a little bit more layered than let's run Gibbs up the middle, which is what it's been a little bit more often, it seems like, in the last few tries.
Yeah, and I will say to somebody's credit, I don't know, to maybe take the blame off of Dan Campbell's shoulders a little bit. I know that Jared Goff killed that play near midfield. And, I like running trap in passing situations, but I do not like running trap when the defense is pressuring on fourth down. So, I'm not sure what Goff saw. I'm not sure, what necessarily happened there. But, I'm with you, Ryan. Like, I think at the end of the day, like, the aggressiveness is where the game is going. It just seemed as though Dan Campbell was on he was on the cutting edge of it so early on. And, you could understand it early on in the process where you gotta just try to win football games when you're cutting your teeth. And you liked it when the offense was something that you could count on to lean on in certain situations. And it felt like you had 4 downs to play with when the running game was working so well. But I agree. I think it's to the point where maybe Dan Campbell needs to kind of reassess and think like who his football team is at this given moment. But a lot of that changes if a healthy Frank Ragnow comes back and you have an all-pro center who hopefully, fingers crossed, can fix a lot of your problems, primarily in the passing game, but in the run game, I think that would help as well.
Definitely. And they were again very injury riddled today. Cologne had his first start at center, and there are a lot of reinforcements coming. So we got to take a quick break, but I want to talk about that after the break, because it's a different scenario than last year. They might be adding up the losses a little bit sooner than they were last year, but the injury situation is a little bit flipped, where they had to deal with it earlier, but most of the people are returning here. So we'll come back with Ryan Mathews of Pride of Detroit. Stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Ryan Mathews of Pride of Detroit, having a good conversation about the Lions game here, and want to cover the season outlook. But I've got an important update for you. Our producer Dan did some research during the break, Ryan, and he did confirm that it was from Taxi Driver, and that is a common thing. I guess cheddar or American cheese. And we're teaching Shayne, because this is totally new for him. He's traveled all around. He's been to Green Bay. He's been to all these places. But they probably weren't trying to serve him any cheese-laden pie.
No, never heard of it.
But it is from Taxi Driver, so good call on Dan's part there. Ryan's still not having cheese on his pie, though, so I don't think that's going to change his decision. But you brought up a good point before the break, Ryan, that I think I was really hoping that we could a victory over the Packers with that Ragnow news, because then the momentum, but they at least still have this coming. They had some returns today. They'll have others as the season goes on. So the reinforcements are coming. It'll just be, is this, what do they look like? And it's a tough schedule with a lot of teams that have a lot of wins, and it's a very competitive division. But I agree on Ragnow. I'm curious how long it's going to take them to kind of kick off the rust and get back. But he just seems like the type of guy that could also step right in and go right back after it.
Yeah, I thought as much too, right? Like Grizzly Man Outdoors, Frank Ragnow, a guy who decided he wanted to come back and play football because he loves football. I can't imagine it's going to take too long. Now, I know Schefter put out there that, probably not next week versus the Cowboys, likely eyeing a return for the Rams game. You lose this game today, though, you go to 7-5, and you take a look around. I think the Dallas Cowboys might knock off the Kansas City Chiefs here today. All of a sudden, they're a team that's playing inspired. They're coming into your town the next week. I think that's a really important game. You look at the Lions' remaining schedule, and it feels like it could come down to Week 18 versus Chicago, but Chicago's also sitting pretty right now at 8-3. They have, I think, what is an absolute gauntlet of a schedule here for their final 6 games, including that game tomorrow at Philadelphia. So when we kind of gamed out, Ryan, the remaining games in the Lions schedule before this Packers game, Jeremy and I were kind of looking at it as if the Lions can just go 4-2, if the Lions can go 4-2, they win that Week 18 game against the Bears, I think it really gives them a shot to getting into the playoffs at 11-6. 10-7 seems a little dicey. 10-7 seems a little dicey. So you need a lot of help. But speaking of a lot of help, Ragnow, yes, like getting him back is supreme, but maybe you're going to get Christian Mahogany back. A broken bone, and Dan Campbell talked about him pretty encouragingly when he had the injury and they put him on IR. So he'll be eligible to come off IR in Week 15. So maybe you get another starter back at some point. You got to win games, though, right? And they're on the outside looking in, so those wins have to come sooner rather than later, and they need to come as soon as a week from now.
Exactly. That would be very poetic if they can have that game really mean something against Chicago at the end of the season. I think that would be an interesting end to the season. And Chicago is a little bit of they're a team that some of those wins weren't necessarily the most predictable, and there could be a bit of a return to the mean. That's not an anti-Ben Johnson thing. That's just more from a statistical standpoint. And teams do that, and some sustain it for the whole season. The Chiefs did it for pretty much the whole season last year and were a couple wins above expected, but they also had Mahomes, and that kind of creates some of that stuff. But Shayne, I'm curious, you were always a guy that had to stay ready. You might be between teams and then go try out with a team, and you weren't necessarily sure when you would get that call. Ragnow obviously is a slightly different situation where this was the deadline for him to return, and so he was probably considering that. But I figured you'd be a good one to speak to. Obviously, it's a different position, but kind of the idea that he's probably had an idea that he wants to return for at least a little bit. They did it on the last day, but that's also going to be a bit of a curve even for a veteran. He knows the scheme, but he didn't go through camp. He didn't get a chance to get those reps. So it's got to be hard. We've talked about this with with talking about how you get less time with the pads on now and you get less hits. He's had no hits. He was presumably, I imagine him like in the wilderness, and then Brad Holmes is trying to call him frequently, and he's like chopping wood somewhere, and then he kept declining Brad Holmes calls. So then Brad had like Graham Glasgow call him when he got hurt, and then that's the call that finally got picked up, and then he came out of retirement. That's just kind of in my head. But he I assume athletically and from a physical standpoint he's been working out and all that, but you still can't simulate those practice reps and those camp reps that he would have gotten.
Absolutely. I mean, you can do certain things when you're training to work on technique and basic fundamentals, and those go a long way. They do, but you sometimes really have to really feel hands on pads and pads on pads and helmet on helmet to really kind of assess instinctual type things. And when you're not in practice, it is tough to really get that down. And I think no matter how good you are, I mean, if you hold out Lawrence Taylor, he's going to come in. His athletic ability is going to make him still be kind of who he was. But also he was a guy who was a little reckless and scheme didn't always matter. There were quite a few plays where he made a play where he went against what his assignment was and still made the play. And I think there are certain guys that, Troy Polamalu was kind of known for being a little reckless when he made some plays and not necessarily having the correct fit, but finding some sort of an intuitive, instinctual type thing. Depending on what you do, if you're not in the playbook and you're not knowing the scheme as it's evolving through the season, as it's evolving to your opponents, that can definitely be tough.
Especially with the synergy that you need as an offensive line too. He's obviously played with most of these guys, but it still will be different to get him back in there and then find that feel. So, but kind of as you alluded to, Ryan, I feel like if anybody can do this, it's him. But I'm curious about what you saw. Do you like my scenario that he was just basically in the woods and then Holmes was trying to call him and then had to have somebody else call him? I'm curious. I'm sure you had a scenario too for him. I want to imagine what he was doing. Maybe he was lakeside painting. Maybe maybe he's doing something else.
Yeah, maybe he kind of just ran out of hobbies. Maybe it was no more. I haven't seen deer in a few days. The fish aren't biting. What's going on at Ford Field, right? He is by no means a simple man, but the immediate thought in my head was Forrest Gump. He got to the end of his run and he just said, "I think I'll go home now." And home is Ford Field for Frank Ragnow. He loves the guy loves football. I think we need to remind ourselves that he probably saw what this team is doing, where they're at, the spot they're in, and he couldn't wait to get back out there with his guys. He knows all those guys. He knows Decker. He knows Sewell. He knows Graham, and he knows what they're going through right now. And I can only imagine how much he was maybe chomping at the bit to come back and help the football team. And it's the single thing though, Ryan. I was shopping at Kroger, and they notoriously get awful service inside of a Kroger. I walk out, get my Thanksgiving food to my car, and I see the tweet from the Lions. I was like, wow, that's a really weird way for the Lions to announce that Frank Ragnow is going to be at the Thanksgiving Day game. And then it was playing for the Detroit Lions now. And the only thought I could have was if the Lions needed one thing, if you could ask me, do they need another pass rusher? Sure, they could use some other things, but what do they absolutely need? They need a center, and they needed an all-pro elite level center, and hopefully they're going to get him back sooner rather than later.
I think that whole thing with the coordinators, I was getting a little sick because obviously you bounce around with the different broadcasts, and then so they all kind of share the same storyline. And at the beginning of the season, it was always, oh, well, they lost both coordinators, and those were big losses. I'm not trying to underestimate those, but they kind of already covered that. I think the Ragnow thing was a little bit covered, other than in the beat markets where you guys were covering it properly and saying, hey, this is arguably the biggest loss that we've had. It's not underestimating Johnson. It's just saying that this is going to be potentially more important. So yeah, I think there is hope with what's happening, and we'll have to see how quickly he gets back in there, but hopefully sooner rather than later. I want to get you back to your gathering, but I want to hit on the Pride of Detroit Movember campaign quick before we get you back there. And I've pulled up the page here, and we'll be promoting that as we have. But I see your name on here a lot more than last year. You're sharing some of the duties with Jeremy more. You're not shaving your head. You didn't volunteer for that one. But are we at the Dan Campbell caffeine challenge? Because Shayne has a similar caffeine regimen with his coffee. And so I'm curious if we've gotten to that amount. That was $35,000 raised, or if we have to wait to that to get to the big event here, and how you're feeling about doing that.
We're still waiting it out, but I got to ask you, Shayne, is that something you had to build up a tolerance? Can I not go 0 to 100 like that?
I don't think it's safe for the average person. I don't know if when the radioactive spider bit me, when this took a hold, but I started drinking coffee like everybody else. You saw people put cream and sugar in it, and then I cut that out, and then it was like, I need a little more juice. And then I started throwing shots of espresso in it, and then I think one time I actually went to a Starbucks, which I abhor. I do not like going to coffee shops. I like to make my own coffee. And I said, can you give me a large black coffee with one less than the lethal dose of espresso? And I think they gave me 10 shots of espresso in this big coffee. And I was coaching, so I kind of needed that juice, and it got me through. I didn't get jittery. I know some people that if they have 2 regular coffees get jittery. So I don't know if my ADHD gives me like an adverse effect to caffeine or what. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, so I think with me, I'm a regular coffee drinker. And I drink a black. Usually I do 2 cups a day, but we'll see. It's for charity, Ryan. So you really got to pull out all the stops. I think I'm on there I have to start a Jared Goff chant in a grocery store. We have the other thing where the players doing things on the field earn us punishments. Every time Jared Goff throws a touchdown pass, like he did to Slaw today and JMO, I have to eat 10 more chicken nuggets. So I think I'm up to like 100 nuggets this month. It's a lot of fun. It's awesome. It's for a great cause. I know we're going to be getting into the end of November here, but we're actually going to run things through the end of next week. So December 6th, that Saturday is going to be our 24-hour live stream where we're on from morning to night. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great way to finish things out. And hopefully at that point, we're talking about the Lions with 8 victories.
Definitely. And we'll be promoting that, and definitely tune into that. They get a lot of great guests for that. I'm doing a little research here for you, Ryan. Shayne brought up the 10 shots. I'm seeing that that you basically have, so a black eye is 2 shots. A green eye or a dead eye is 3 shots. I don't know what 10 is, Shayne. I don't know what we can call that.
Do not resuscitate.
Yeah, DNR. That's a DNR coffee right there. Yeah. So I'm glad you're doing though. So do you drink any coffee, Ryan? Is this truly 0 to 100 here?
Oh, no. I usually do a couple cups of black coffee throughout the day. I mean, I need it when I get up in the morning to teach. So I need it. It's vital.
Okay, yeah. If you were going 0 to this, I'd be a little scared. I think the Jared Goff chant in like a grocery store or whatever. That just seems like something you would do anyways. Maybe like I can see you doing that.
Nah, maybe not Jared Goff, not after the past month. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Maybe a more random player for that one. Maybe a Khalif Raymond chant or something. But no, we want to make sure to highlight this. We'll be talking about the live stream that you guys will do and all of that, because we want to support the Movember campaign that you guys are doing, because it's a great cause, and we'll be promoting it on our social media and everything. But we appreciate you joining the show. We want to make sure you get that dinner that you laid out there, and yeah, we appreciate you joining us. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and we'll hopefully talk to you down the road as the Lions chalk up some more wins here.
Yeah, and not to put you on the spot, but maybe we need to have Ryan Walsh as a special guest on the little live stream on Saturday, December 6th, if that works for your schedule. So happy Thanksgiving to you two fellas, and hope you guys have a great weekend.
I'd hate to have the campaign money go down. There's a scene in Parks and Rec where the money actually goes down when they're running one of these 24-hour campaigns. So I'd worry about that if I was on there. But I'll do anything I can to help. So you can pencil me in if you need to.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, appreciate you joining the show, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon. And go enjoy your meal here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. See you guys. All
right. Thanks, Ryan. Talk to you later. Thanks to Ryan Mathews. Appreciate him joining us here. Always good stuff. Hopefully he gets that meal he was looking forward to. We've got to take a quick break, and then we'll do a short segment. I have a question to ask Shayne that I thought of after last week, because he's the one to ask here. And then we'll start getting into the mode for the Thanksgiving food draft here with Jacob at 8:00. So stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM, where we got just a quick segment here before we get Jacob on. But Shayne, I'd been wanting to ask you this after, obviously, we had 2 games from our last episode with the Giants game being in there. We had a very interesting Jameis Winston experience. I always like watching him play because it's always exciting in whatever way it ends up manifesting. But the thing I wanted to ask you about is that Jake Bates kick, because obviously it was a great kick. I mean, you still probably have to marvel. I do. I mean, I remember the days where, anything over 50 was like, okay, yeah, this is tough. Now it's becoming more automatic for some of these young guys, thanks to some of the things that you've helped institute and the kickers before them and the stuff you're doing with the school. But I know a lot of people were curious about that movement of the ball, and obviously there's probably a lot of factors that factor in there, but it's always interesting when you get a football that moves twice, not just one move. And so I figured you were the best person to explain that one to us.
And we call that the double break. And honestly, the way it works is very similar to a baseball, when you see a baseball break. Because there are laces on that football, when you hit the ball, and you might hit it pretty solid, but if you have any side spin, and the reason that can happen is you have a round surface and an imperfect surface like your foot hitting through the ball, you never know what type of side spin you might get on that. And I wish I knew the science as to why it breaks twice, but the only thing I can imagine is whatever side spin, because the ball is rotating end over end, when those laces are creating some sort of an imbalance, just like you think about your tire. When you get your tires balanced, they put a little weight somewhere on the inside of your rim, and that balances your tire out so that you don't get a wobble, right? Those laces can be an imperfect balance to that football, so it could create a wobble in the rotation that is so microscopic you can't really see that it's an off-rotation ball, but those laces may be spinning sideways, and the few times it's spinning on one side of the ball, it's creating one side of a break, and then it might reach across that axis and rotate to the other side where it's spinning, and then it creates the opposite break in the ball. So that's the only way I can explain it. I think I explained it pretty dang good, but that's also a guess based on just what I know about the rotation of the ball and kicking.
That's a great explanation. I mean, it makes total sense now that I'm thinking about it, because like you said, that's the one thing that's not totally symmetrical about the ball. Otherwise, if you removed those, then the ball would be equal if you cut it down the middle.
Yes.
But with those laces, it does throw things off, and we're always talking about a game of inches and the minor things that can affect things. That makes total sense.
And that's why we, even if we have a perfect hold where the laces are pointing forward, things can still go awry. But that is also why we want the laces pointed forward, to take out the least amount of variables of any side compression, because when you hit the opposite side of that ball, that's the most compression you can get. If you hit anything off center, the compression is slightly off. And if you hit a ball even almost perfect, you just never know where that ball is going to, compress around your foot and bounce off of it. There's a little bit of who knows what that happens in that. And if you want to call who knows what science, we'll call it science.
You're removing a variable from the situation, which there's already a few, but you're removing a variable if you put it on the backside. It just makes me think of Ray Finkel when I think of the laces being in. That's my uneducated opinion about that, or thought about that. But that's a great explanation. Yeah, I think that sheds a lot of light for the listeners there. So I want to get that question answered. We did. We'll take another quick break here, and then we'll get Jacob on after the break and get the draft going and get his takes on the Packers Lions game from earlier today. So stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM.
From the Scully Statewide Moving Studios.
Country with a Twist, Jethro FM, 1530 AM, WYGR, Wyoming, Grand Rapids, 94.9 FM, Grand Rapids, 99.5 FM, Lowell, and Jethro South, 980 AM, WAKV Otsego, Plainwell, 98.9 FM, Otsego, and 105.1 FM, Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at jethro.fm.
Happy to bring on this next guest. Jacob's been one of our favorite analysts to cover the other teams here that we cover. So although we're not happy on the Lions side, I'm happy that his team had a good game, and I'm hoping he had a good Thanksgiving too. So how was the meal here? First off, Jacob.
Yeah, my family's not into football at all, so having to explain everything to them has been interesting over the last couple of years. But they scheduled dinner for right at 3:00. So the fourth down pass to Dontavion Wicks that sealed the game, they were asking me to come in and get ready to say grace as they were getting ready to eat. And I was like, we're going to have to wait a minute, or you guys can go without me. I'm not going to argue with that, but I kind of need to know what's going on. But the meal was great. Shout out Aunt Becky and my mom for cooking and putting it all together. And I consumed about 3 plates in probably 45 seconds because I was starving.
Way to go, Aunt Becky and Mom. We appreciate it. Yeah, that's good. Well, so we got to update the draft here. So speaking of moms, my mom is participating. We moved this to a live draft, which I like. We're going to do it during the interview and try to find a flow of the interview while still doing the draft. My mom ended up having the first pick. And so we'll just kind of move along on the draft board as we go through this interview. So she picked steak with the first pick. I think that's a good pick. That's a solid start. She went with a Maine. That would be true to since she's my mom, it would be true to me too, because that's what we like more than the turkey side of things. So Shayne's now on the clock. I don't know. We don't need to be too strict on the time, but we also don't want to have any Minnesota Vikings situations where we get them in too late either.
I've already got my card written out.
Nice. Okay, well let's just submit it, and then we'll move to Dan after that.
I'm going to go with the obvious number one pick with my first selection in the 2025 Thanksgiving Day draft. Shayne Graham would like to select turkey as his main.
A solid pick. You can't go wrong with that. That puts our producer Dan on the clock, and he's taking his notes over there. So I don't know if he's ready or if he needs a second here.
No, my hand was forced. I'm going to take ham, so I'm not eating hot dogs on Thanksgiving.
Okay, well, we're having a run on the mains. So Jacob, you're number 4 here. I'm in the anchor position. So it's your pick. Are you going to stick me with a main, or are you going to go a different direction?
Yeah, so I'm a Wisconsin guy at heart, right? So if I don't pick a bratwurst is a sausage, so I'm going to specify that. You put hot dog / sausage, so maybe I'm cooking the books here a little bit, but I don't think anybody from Wisconsin is going to tell me that having a brat is on any day is a bad thing. So with the run on the mains here, I was hoping that maybe you guys would ignore turkey and go sides or something like that, but that's the route I'm going to go. I'm going to take a bratwurst.
Interesting. Okay, so you're changing my strategy here. I totally approve the bratwurst selection, because if I was going to go sausage, I was going to go kielbasa, given my Polish heritage. So
Sure.
Same kind of idea there. So okay, that's off the board. Well, okay, so I'm going to have to take lamb, but I'm going to do this strategically. I'm not going to take it in the first round, because I don't have to take it now. I'm the only one left. That's going to be my last pick. I feel like that's how I have to do this. So I'm back to back, and you're making me kind of playing on the fly here. I'm gonna knock out my sides. I'm gonna go with the corn casserole, because I really like my mom's corn casserole, and she does a great cheesy mashed potato. So I'm going to take mashed potatoes and gravy off, and I'm going to take those two sides and put them on mine, which then puts where we at. That puts you back on the board, Jacob. We're rolling here. We haven't even needed any breaks.
No, yeah. So brats cheese. Again, Wisconsin's happy. Macaroni and cheese. That's not something that we do at my Thanksgiving that often, but I wish we did, because you mentioned your mother's recipe. My mom's macaroni and cheese recipe is very, very good. So if I'm getting that at Thanksgiving with a bratwurst, I could sim to the end here because I'm happy with how it went, but obviously we'll play along. But yeah, I'll go mac and cheese at the with my second pick.
Okay, that puts Dan on the clock here. I like the way this is rolling here. This is interesting how this is playing out.
I'm taking green bean casserole. I'm a big fan of that.
That was a hot one. That was what Ryan Mathews wanted. That was what he was looking for in the first segment there. So that's a good one. That puts you on the clock here, Shayne. Maybe you need a minute. Well, at some point we're going to probably need a minute. I don't know.
I do not need a minute.
Go for it.
I'm going to go with. So I typically eat carnivore.
Yep.
Which I sometimes stray and I go keto. Okay. So I'm going to go with one of the sides that is not going to take me out of ketosis.
Okay.
So I'm going to make my second selection collard greens.
A healthy Shayne Graham. He did allude that one to me, but I didn't tell anybody that. I wanted to make sure you had that as an option here. So that one's off the board.
Daddy.
And then that puts Mom on the clock here. She's outside the studio, so I got to tell her she's on the clock here. So we'll have to take a minute, but we got to get Jacob's takes on the game here because I'm curious. One of the things that I find interesting about this particular game, because these are each kind of like snowflakes, all these individual games. This was whatever it was, 197th matchup or whatever it said at the beginning of the game. But I thought there was a lot of talk about Dan Campbell's aggression last year, and it was when he was successful. Now he's been scuffling a little bit with the result. It's not that they're terrible play calls, but LaFleur to me is one of the least aggressive, and he ended up being quite aggressive in this game and matching Dan Campbell's level of aggressiveness, and obviously had a lot larger success. So I'm curious how you kind of took that in after watching him, obviously a lot more than me, but just in general, you watch LaFleur a lot, and he's a great coach, aggressive.
Yeah, it was jarring just to see Matt LaFleur's level of aggression in the game. And the other thing about it was, as it happened, was that it stayed throughout the game. If you had stuck truth serum in me at the 3rd and 3 where they threw incomplete to Watson right before the conversion to Wicks, I would have told you they're going to go to the line of scrimmage. They're going to do the stupid try and make them jump off sides play that everybody does and nobody jumps. And then they're going to punt and say, we trusted our defense with Parsons and Gary and all of those guys. And then whatever happened there would happen there instead. I said it before, given the team 2 downs to pick up 3 yards. And LaFleur did do that. But it was surprising to see him go for it on that 4th and 3 specifically, and really kind of throughout the game. Normally, he was aggressive-ish his first couple of seasons. Last year, not as much. I think some of that had to do, and then this year was, and I was in favor of it during the Minnesota game, how conservative, whatever you want to call it, that they were throughout the game with just running the football and trying to get out of there, which I think actually played, maybe not entirely, but some of Green Bay's favor. It played to that today because the Lions had to play a whole extra quarter in Green Bay, something like that last week. But to me, that was a very significant part of the game. The two teams, they ran like the same amount of plays. They gained the same amount of yards. The difference in the game was Green Bay had 3 4th-down conversions. 2 of those were touchdowns, and one of them was a game-sealing reception on 4th down. And for the Lions, I didn't think they did anything wrong by going for it on 4th down either time. And they get stuffed on a play in the backfield for Jahmyr Gibbs on a 4th and 2. If I tell you need to spread them out and get 2 yards with Jahmyr Gibbs, you'd probably sign up for that. And the other one, like, the result is bad, but Jamison Williams might score a touchdown if the ball's in front of him, and if nothing else, he's wide open, and the ball hits him on the back hip. Like, you can debate whether he should catch it. Goff needs to throw a better ball, all that good stuff, everything like that. But I had no problem with the way the Lions approached the game on 4th down either. It's just sometimes you're not going to get the result you always get. I remember last year when Green Bay went to Ford Field and we were talking after that game, I think the Lions were like 4 for 5 on 4th downs last year, including one that allowed them to kick a game-winning field goal as time expired. So that's kind of where that situation went. I thought Green Bay did a good job of of converting when they had the opportunity, and I thought that they did the right thing by trying to go for it.
I agree, and I said this in the first interview with Ryan, that you can't pick and choose based on the result. Hey, it wasn't successful, so now I don't like it, which would be a very sports radio thing of me to do, but that's why our show is a little bit different. But I don't think I liked the idea, but the only problem I had is they tended to favor the inside runs in a lot of those plays. And I mean, the defense was playing very well, especially the interior of that defense. I just didn't like running into the teeth of that defense. I know one was likely an audible, but whoever ended up calling it, that's that was the tough part for me. They didn't go with anything a little bit more layered. They ended up going up the middle on a couple of those.
Yeah, and really, I think the biggest surprise of this season, and granted, it's Thanksgiving Day, was that the ineffectiveness in general of Detroit's run game against Green Bay, because that was supposed to be like, the Achilles heel of Green Bay's defense. They trade for Micah Parsons. Kenny Clark goes out the door in the same process, and TJ Slayton left in the offseason as well. So that's a big part of the spine of their defense. And then you add in Quay Walker, Green Bay's middle linebacker, didn't play today either. Edrin Cooper missed some time. He got dinged up a little bit during the game as well. And Detroit just 2 games couldn't really run it. The first time around, Green Bay jumped out to a lead. That had a little bit to do with it, but Detroit didn't have much going for them in that game. And then this game, I ran the numbers earlier. I know it was like 20 carries for 68 yards for Gibbs, and they ran for like 100 yards total. They didn't run for 4 yards a carry in either game with their 2 backs against Green Bay this year. And I think that was a massive difference. I'm sure if this game was played in a couple weeks and Frank Ragnow was playing center, then that might be a little bit different. But now, I mean, you look at the way this is what this game kind of meant today with Detroit losing. Dallas won, so Dallas has a chance to kind of jump them next week with a win on Thursday Night Football. Frank Ragnow may have just come back to play out the string in the regular season. Obviously, a lot of football left to be played, but that's, Detroit is not the loser of this game in general. Was not a shoe-in for the playoffs, and now Detroit is a full tiebreaker behind Green Bay because Green Bay's beaten them twice. They do have a tiebreaker over Chicago currently, and they'll get another chance there, and they have a chance against Dallas as well. But this was a massive loss for Detroit, who needed to hold serve at home, and their running game, I think, against Green Bay specifically, is one of the big reasons why they're sitting where they are.
Don't be sending any hate mail to Jacob for that take. It's absolutely right. I mean, this was a big. This could have been a huge momentum thing for the Lions because Ragnow coming back and then stacking the win against the Packers. I think the season outlook would have looked good. But I agree with what you're saying. There's a lot that they're going to have to do. Not that they can't do it. That's not what we're saying. But the path just got a lot tougher here. And you guys are making things way more confusing with the tie. I've already talked about this with you, but the tie thing, I just can't. I'm usually a math guy, but when we get ties involved, Shayne, I can't do it anymore with the ties. Can we eradicate the tie?
I've been a part of a tie.
Have you? How did you feel about that?
Shayne, were you the Bengals-Eagles tie way back when?
Yes, and I had a 46-yarder that could have ended it.
I didn't know that.
I just remember McNabb saying after the game, like, that he didn't know a game could end in a tie, and I thought he was being facetious, but it turned out that he wasn't.
Yeah, it was. You know what? It was a gloomy, windy day. I still should have made that kick. I look back on that as one of those situations. But there was a situation where my best friend Frosty Rucker recovered a fumble on like the 5-yard line, and he tripped and fell at the 2, and they stopped us, and we kicked a field goal.
I think I remember that.
And that would have been that difference in the game if you look back on it, right? And it was like so many things should have gone our way that game that didn't. So it was like, and to be a part of one of the first ties in like kind of like in that modern era, it was quite the it did not feel good.
That's interesting. I think I do remember that. Frosty Rucker, by the way, one of the best names that has been through the NFL.
And you'd be surprised how many people. Like I was just with him last weekend, And like still to this day, people are like, "That's not your real name." And he pulls his license out, and there it is. That is his legal name since birth. And it is what it is, but it is definitely a cool name.
Oh yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a cool name. But that's an interesting story. I'm glad we got that one out of you. We got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back with Jacob, and we've got some picks to update here for the draft. But stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Jacob Westendorf. We got some draft updates here. So Mom was at the turn here, so she had back-to-back picks. She took stuffing and sweet potato casserole. We're starting to run on the sides a little bit. Those are both very solid picks here. She's got a good meal going. That puts Shayne on the clock. I don't know if he's ready to go. He's been ready every time. I feel like he is not the Vikings on the cards here.
I think I'm going to end up with my full slot of exactly what I wanted for every pick today.
Interesting. I like it.
If you haven't figured out, there's actually one thing I would have picked in the dessert category, but it's not in there.
Okay.
But that being said, you can see a theme with what I'm picking.
Yeah, you're not going bread here.
I'm going to go bread.
Oh, are you? Okay.
I am going to go bread. Okay, but I'm going to go with cornbread. And if you can tell the theme, I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia, so collard greens, cornbread, that was like a staple. So I got if I'm going to eat bread, it's going to be cornbread, and it's going to have butter slathered all over it. So it's I'm getting exactly what I wanted for my meal.
That's a solid one. I was thinking you would stay away from the bread because of the the carb nature of it. But if you're going to go with a bread, that's the one to go with.
I mean, my other options are.
You got the cranberry sauce.
Cranberry sauce, okay?
Yeah,
that's gonna take my glucose up really high.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stick with I'm gonna treat myself. It's gonna be the cornbread.
I think that's a great pick there. That puts Dan on the clock. His button is red, so he's ready to go. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna go with the dessert. Start the dessert run.
Okay.
I don't want cranberry and ham, so I'm gonna go. I'll take the rolls off the board.
Okay. So that leaves Jacob in a similar situation to me. That now that's his last because you only have one side here, I think, Jacob. So that's the last one. But you don't necessarily have to take that. But you're on the clock now.
Yeah, and I'm not big on any of that stuff, so I'm going to end up stuck with whatever it is that I'm stuck with. I'll figure that out at one of these days. But it's food and football on Thanksgiving Day. So they're naming these things after one particular player. How can you not want to watch a game with John Madden at the controls here? So I will take John Madden as my analyst for my football games.
Smart pick. You're stuck, like you said. You're stuck with the cranberry, just like I'm stuck with the lamb. So might as well just leave that for your last pick here. I'm gonna take the dessert. I'm gonna start that run and go with the chocolate pudding pie. There's only two of these that I really even care for, which is that and the apple pie. So I'm gonna go with the chocolate pudding pie there and take that off the board. And then I can. I don't think anybody's really going to take my people that I would want to listen to. So I'm going to think about those, and for time purposes, I'm going to take lamb because I know I have to take that, and then I'll do my other two with the last with my last picks here, and think of the team that I want, because I'm pretty sure I'm going off the board where nobody's going to take me there. So that puts you back on the board here, though, Jacob.
Yep, so I'm going to pair, like I mentioned, it's football, dessert, I'm not huge on, and the other side is what it is, so I'm going to make sure I get the guys that I want. I think he's the best in the business. I've listened to him do football, baseball for my whole life, so I will take Joe Buck as my play-by-play analyst for the game.
Interesting. I intentionally didn't take anybody because I wanted to see who you were going to take. It could have been an Al Michaels thing there. Obviously, Summerall. You could have gone a couple different routes, and then obviously whoever else you wanted. So okay, that's a good pick. That puts Dan back on the clock here.
Well, you kind of scared me by saying you're going to go off the board for your announcer.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to take my play-by-play guy.
Okay.
Listening to him with the Tigers.
That's a good one.
Really like,
that would be one on my board.
I like him calling football, Jason Benetti.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Benetti. He used to be with the White Sox, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was with the White Sox.
Yeah.
He doesn't get as jokey when he does football, and his voice sounds great. Doing a game.
I've talked about this. My show ends up becoming a Jason Benetti tribute on Sports Intel sometimes because I do really like him, and Dan knows that because he's produced Sports Intel more than anybody else. But I like how he changes from sport to sport because, like you said, does get jokey with baseball, but basketball he gets a little bit more serious, especially if he's tethered to Bill Raftery. He has to be, and then football he's a little different too. So that's good because you're setting yourself. I won't give away anything, but you're setting yourself up for a good pair that he used to partner with there for football. So that's a good one. That leaves Shayne with the next pick here.
Dessert is not necessarily a high priority for me, so I'm going to skip over that for now.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Keith Jackson.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
That's a very solid pick.
A lot of Michigan football games in my childhood were called by him and Brent Musburger. Those were the two.
Yeah, they had Musburger back in the booth for one of the Sunday night games for the first time in a while. That was interesting to see him. I like that pick a lot. Okay, that puts Mom back on the clock here. So we'll get her pick. She's got a good team going, but we got to get back to some analysis here from Jacob because now one of the things I like to ask you guys, the opposing analysts, I think some Lions fans would obviously have a subjective view of some of those things that happened in the game.
I wondered.
Yeah, well, I like to do it from an objective standpoint because I like to think I'm fairly objective about the Lions, and I believe you to be objective about the Packers. But I always like to get kind of a little bit of a fact check, like, okay, how did you see that touchdown with Wicks in the corner? How did the timeout situation is a little harder to work out because you don't always know what information is happening there.
Yeah, so the timeout on the false start, when you slow it down on the broadcast, it looks like Belton jumped before the timeout was called. But again, that's, to me, I think it's not that different, not no different, but not very different than when, like, it's delay a game, but they give you the benefit of the doubt of blowing the timeout on the play. But obviously a major factor of the game, does LaFleur go for it if it's 4th and 6 instead of 4th and 1? I don't know. Not sure what the mechanic is on that play. You're also talking to somebody who it's baseball, a different sport, but I am an official. So I tend to stick up for them a little bit more than the average internet consumer might. But the touchdown to me was a situation where that was the call on the field. Looks like the ball's in his hands with his one of his foot still on the ground, and then the other one comes across as well. I think if they had called it incomplete on the field, that they wouldn't have overturned it. But since it was called a touchdown on the field, they kept it that way. It reminded me of, I don't know if you guys will remember this, Donovan Peoples-Jones had a play it could have been a touchdown against Wisconsin, I think is who it was, when he was playing in Ann Arbor. And it was like his one foot was kind of down when he caught the ball, but they didn't give that credit to him. They just called it incomplete. It kind of reminded me of that with Wicks. The reality of it is, later in the game, Christian Watson has his hand held down by one of the Lions defensive backs. It goes uncalled. They haven't called much on the DB throughout the course of the day, and then they call illegal contact on Keyshawn Nixon when there's a sack by Kingsley Enagbare. Not to sound like a classic football coach, but I would say if you control the controllables, then the officials just aren't going to matter that much, and you'll be able to kind of take them out of the game if something like that happens. So stuff like that happens all the time. It's going to happen for both teams. It just is the nature of humans trying to judge a game that is played by super freak athletes. But, live time didn't look great.
Well, and I'm glad to know, I didn't know about the baseball officiating. We might have to get you, because I want to talk more with some officials, because I actually am more on that side too. I don't have any history with it other than doing some younger YMCA stuff back in the day. But I think that it's a lot tougher than any of us can imagine. Shayne's been as close to it as anybody. And I mean, that game is moving so fast. And I just think we're not giving these guys, again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier, where you're talking about the coach having to make these split-second decisions. It's the same thing with the refs. They don't have all the camera angles we do. They don't have the after they don't have the video to look at unless it's a reviewable play or what have you. And so to process all that information that quickly from just your angle when you're being blocked by 300-pound guys and your view is being obstructed, it's a lot tougher than I think fans make it out to be.
It really is. And now listen, we've all seen some calls where we're like, how in the world do you miss that? And honestly, I think there are some questionable things that happen sometimes, and you have to question, is there a motive behind it? And I think that's a fair thing sometimes to look at. But you have to remember they are human, and our eyes don't always see every single thing that we see on the TV. And maybe every single thing that someone sees from a wider scope when they're looking from the sidelines or the stands or the box or whatever. I think those mistakes are to be had. But usually they're going to be ones that are hard to see. What blows our minds is when we see completely obvious or blatant misconstruements of what the technical rule is supposed to be. And that's where it blows our mind as a fan or even as a player or coach on the sideline. Because, I mean, I've seen some ridiculous stuff over the years, and we didn't need the TV angles to see it. So you got to wonder, like, how does the ref not see that? So that's where we kind of wonder, like, is there some bias? Is there some home cooking or whatever you want to call it? I mean, it's there, but also they can't be perfect. But what really gets us is the super blatant ones.
That makes total sense. And yeah, some of it I think comes down to you've got the training regimen that probably could be improved but like you said, there's, I mean, we talked about this a little bit last week with the gambling element. Not that I'm insinuating anything and I'm not making any accusations, but there is a natural connection there that fans make and say, hey, there's a lot of money more than ever because it's a lot easier to do this now. It's a lot easier to gamble. And I'm not saying that they're that they're doing anything, but that they're also not beyond reproach too. So there's both sides of that.
Absolutely, and I think as a whole, are games fixed? No, I really want to believe they're not. And everyone talks about the script and all this stuff. Listen, as players and coaches, our jobs are on the line. So we're not going to do stuff to fit some sort of narrative or script. We're going to try to play our best. Now, does that mean that there's an individual here and there that doesn't get affected like the Boston College basketball team, right? Does that mean the guy in the NBA that got caught with whatever he was doing, that referee, I forget what his name was.
Tim Donahue, yeah.
Yeah, so like there's always going to be an outlier on certain things, but as a macro, I don't think it's a real issue. But that doesn't mean it doesn't happen every now and then. It's tough to look at when you see it. So sometimes it just makes it really easy to wonder, and those conspiracies kind of play out right in front of our eyes. And sometimes they're conspiracies, and sometimes they're truth that gets revealed later.
Yeah, that's true. I know. And again, that's why they're not beyond reproach. There are things that have happened, and that was in the NBA side, but you can imagine that some of this stuff would potentially happen. But yeah, interesting conversation. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to update the picks. We're going to finish up the draft, and we're going to close this here, I think, with Jacob and talk a little Michigan football because he's a big Michigan football guy, and I think there's a big game coming up sometime soon here.
Some would say.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that after the break. So stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Jacob Westendorf. We're doing the draft. We're talking some football here. Got a pick to update. I like this one. So this is another local broadcaster here, Jacob. But I like how my mom did this. She's always been a big Ernie Harwell fan. He used to do the radio broadcast for the Tigers, and she wants to see him do a football game. I like it. I bet he could pull it off. So she picked him. That puts Shayne on the clock here, and we were having a discussion in studio about some of these broadcasters, including one he knows. So I'm curious what direction he's going to go, or if he's ready yet.
So I'm going to go along the lines. There's some great picks out there left. I know Chris Collinsworth. I'm friends with him. I'm not going to pick him.
Okay.
Honestly, I'll just stop there. Tom Brady was teammates with him. I think he does a great job. I was saying in the break, I don't think he's iconic yet. I think he's got to kind of come into feeling a little more natural with it. Tony Romo, when he first came in, was really hot. Everyone was so impressed that he could, see the defenses.
He's so bad.
But that's the thing. It's like I don't like hearing his voice, and I don't like some of the other stuff. So I took Keith Jackson. I think he's kind of like a very classic, iconic voice that we all kind of hear, and it just reminds us of football when you hear his voice. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with a modern, almost like a shock type voice. I want to go with Pat McAfee.
Okay, I like that pick.
And I'm going to pick him because I've heard him actually do some on-air color.
I have too.
And it's entertaining.
It is. He was very good.
And I think, when you see him on stage on game day, I like it. It's different. It's not the traditional, classic, but that's what makes that show, and that's when you see Saban kind of break out of his shell reacting to him, and all the other guys on the set are like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this type stuff. But the excitement that he gets when he's explaining certain things, when he's doing the games, I think it just brings a little bit of a modern touch. You've got the classic old school guy, and then you bring in the guy that allegedly has been arrested for being drunk in a town square water fountain. I think it's a great match and an entertaining Thanksgiving.
I could see Keith rolling with that too. I do remember, because that was kind of early career Pat McAfee when he was doing those games, and he was good. He wasn't as bombastic as he is now, because he's kind of working his way into a gimmick. He's doing the wrestling and stuff too. Yeah. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. It's a great gimmick. It's working very well for him. And so that's I like that. I like that pick. I wouldn't have thought of him, but I like that pick.
He's definitely a character. He's a type fit. Like he plays a part, and he does a good job of it. I mean, he retired from football to take a contract as a comedian, and so that's where he kind of has that stage presence almost, and I like it. I think it's a fresh way to look at it. Some people don't like it. I do.
That's a good pick. Dan, I think that puts you up here.
Yeah, you probably know, because I think you were alluding to he partners with him, but I actually think he probably would be the number one at Fox if it wasn't for Brady. I'm going to take Greg Olsen.
That's a good pick.
I think when I watch a game, I think he does the best job. And I used to not even know it was him calling the game, but I would be like, I like this guy who's calling.
I think he does a really good job.
I think he's really good at it.
Yeah, I don't think he got a fair shake, if I'm being honest.
Right. I agree with you 100%.
I'm with you on that. That's one of the teams that I would have picked. That's a good pick there. So we got one more from Jacob here before I'm up. So you got your last pick will be cranberry. So what's this one, Jacob?
Apple pie.
I think apple pie is off the board.
Oh, did I double pick? Oh, that's bad.
That's okay. That's okay. Wait, you're the one on the phone, so that's harder for you to do. So
amateur move by me here. So what are my dessert options?
I think you got.
I know you took chocolate.
I took chocolate. I think the other three are still available, other than apple pie and chocolate. You got carrot cake, pecan pie, and pumpkin pie. I know this is why I took one early. Those are the three I wouldn't have wanted. And I know pumpkin pie.
That's of the three. That's the best one.
I know that's popular. That's just not for me. That's a good one. Okay, so I get to take my pairing together. Dan took a very good pairing. That is one that I would have liked. I also like Shayne's pairing, but I wouldn't have. I can't say I would have thought of the Pat McAfee part of that. I think I'm going to go. So my play-by-play guys were 1A, 1B. Benetti was one of them. The other one was Kevin Harlan. I'm a big Kevin Harlan fan, and I like kind of like Benetti. He does multiple sports. I like his take on football. You're about to say something, Dan.
I was just saying, was he paired with Brady today? Is he?
He's usually with Trent Green.
Trent Green, okay.
Yep.
He's a CBS guy then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, and he does a lot of the radio stuff with Trent Green as well. Oh, this made me think of another guy for the analysts, though, because for the radio broadcast, Mike Golick does a decent amount of the analysis there, which I do like Golick. He's kind of a sneaky
senior.
Yes. Junior's not. I've seen him do some stuff too. They're both interesting, but I'm going to go with my original pick that I had identified once Dan had made his picks. Olsen would have been on the board for me. This is kind of Greg Olsen before Greg Olsen to me. Daryl Johnston. I've always liked him. He's updated with the game. You can tell he's still studying it over all these years. And although people could say, hey, he got that job because he was the fullback for the America's team Cowboys, I think he does a very solid job. So I think that's a solid pairing that I would like to listen to. So that puts you back on the clock, Jacob, but your pick is already cast there because we stuck you with the cranberry sauce.
I'll end up with the dog.
Well, that's all right. Then he'll enjoy his meal. That's good. Dan, your last pick. I don't know what we.
I think I have to get a dessert.
Are you? Oh, you're a dessert. Okay.
Yeah, I'll take pecan pie because I actually really like it. I discovered a couple of years ago. I don't know what is in between the crust and the pecans, but that gooey looking, unappetizing looking, but it actually tastes really good.
That's a solid pick. That's a classic there. So then that's you, Shayne, and then I think we stuck you with what, carrot cake then,
and I'm good with that because carrot cake and key lime pie are two of my favorite desserts. If I were to pick a pie for Thanksgiving, I would have picked sweet potato pie, but since that's not on here, I'm going to gladly accept carrot cake onto my roster.
Okay. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what to do with the pies because we needed a bunch of pie options. Then we also had sweet potato casserole. But sweet potato pie, we can kind of put an asterisk by that.
And that's kind of a cultural thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Southern type thing, just like the collard greens and cornbread for me. Those all kind of fall in that traditional Southern food.
Right. That makes sense. So we can maybe switch that out for Shayne so it goes with the rest of his meal. But those are all good picks. Mom has one more pick. She's got to pick her analyst, but I like these teams here. So Jacob, 2 questions. How do you feel about your team, your roster here? And then also how do you feel about your other team, Michigan here? Because it's an interesting matchup, and although they were writing them off last year, I don't think that's happening quite as much because of the recent history. And so I'm curious of your take going into this game.
Yeah, roster food-wise is good. I'll be happy enough, if nothing else, with my bratwurst and my macaroni, and we'll be good to go from there. As for the D game, as they call it, on Saturday afternoon, which Michigan has won the last 4. You guys may have heard that. You may not have. I think the element of surprise, if you will, is gone. I think this Ohio State team is arguably better than the one that played in Columbus a season ago. This Michigan team, the matchups in some spots, they don't have that dominant defensive tackle group, which essentially took away Ohio State's run game and kind of allowed them to play some of those coverages on the back end and everything like that they did a year ago. Now, on the flip side, Michigan's offense is significantly better than what they trotted out there a season ago. I think they were ranked above the service academies in offense, and that was it. Ohio State's defense, though, is incredible. And I don't like to say nice things about them, but they are. They're very good. I am a little bummed with the present state of college football. Something about last season's game that I think I even talked about with you guys is Michigan winning that game a year ago should have been an elimination game. If you lose to a team by 3 touchdowns, or that's a 3-touchdown underdog, in my opinion, you don't deserve to make the playoff. Now, Ohio State, that doesn't discredit what they did from there. That's just the nature of where college football is at now. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on the way you look at it, this game doesn't really matter to Ohio State. They could very easily spin this as losing to Michigan was a good thing, because then they don't have to go play Indiana next week and potentially risk injury. They don't have to really, just that's the big thing. They wouldn't have to play an extra game, and then they could just kind of get ready for the playoff because they know they're in. Even if Michigan beats them, Ohio State's going to make the playoff. But in terms of the game itself, in the last 20 years of me watching Michigan, I think I've expected, quote unquote, them to beat Ohio State once, and it was 2023. So I don't expect that, kind of like I told you last week when we talked on Thursday. I think that, a 9-win season, if you were realistic with your expectation and having a chance to make the playoff potentially with a win on Saturday, I think you would have signed up for that before the season started if you're a Michigan fan. And that's kind of how I feel now. If they are not winning on Saturday by about 2:15, then I'm not going to be a very happy camper. But my proposal is that since the state of Michigan's football team did not get a win on Thanksgiving, that they should just get one on Saturday, and then the state can be happy as a whole. So I'm excited to watch, excited to see kind of how Michigan's young team stacks up, and really kind of like today was a statement by Jordan Love and Green Bay's offense. So this could be a potential legacy maker, if you will, for Bryce Underwood and Jordan Marshall and some of these guys that wear the winged helmet as well. So it's going to be fun. It usually is. And I'm excited to sit back and watch it. We have a snowstorm coming here to my neck of the woods on Saturday, so I ain't doing anything else.
Well, you probably weren't going out anyway, so that's good. But
Good point, yeah.
But yeah, see, Jacob Westendorf, he's a problem solver and an optimist. He's trying to get a win for the Michigan faithful here. Some of the Detroit fans that are Michigan State fans won't like that, but he's trying to make some people happy. Jacob, I got to be honest, I still don't know what to do about Indiana being the other side of this, because I'm just not used to them being good as an alma mater. It just doesn't. I love it, but I don't know.
I'll tell you, Signetti that was a guy who I thought for sure LSU or Florida or one of those teams would have just said, here's $200 million. Come here. Maybe they did, and he just doesn't want to leave. But that is a guy who I don't know if Indiana's ever going to become Ohio State or something like that, but I would be willing to bet you they're going to be a contender perennially as long as he's there. I think he is a very good coach.
They were lucky to get him for sure, and they got him at the right time. It's amazing that he was around for that long for Indiana to be able to get him, but getting him at this point in his career.
And if he didn't leave for Penn State, he's from that area. So if he didn't leave for Penn State, what job is he leaving for then? It's kind of the situation you're in.
I think when I look at this, I see kind of his brand is a very, his team plays hard for him. They're loyal to him. I feel like it's his brand to be loyal to them. Now, obviously, we're all human, and sometimes temptation of dollar signs can get to all of us. But I think that he was reproached, and that he stayed on brand and ignored it or disregarded it. Because he sees what he's done something special at that university. And I think when you look at what a Brian Kelly has done and the reputation it gives that person, Brian Kelly brought Cincinnati kind of to the forefront, and then he leaves ship immediately to Notre Dame, and then, jumps ship and goes to LSU. I think there are certain coaches that when they see that, it's like, I don't want to be looked at the same way. And I think that the brand that he has created at Indiana plays into the fact that I think he's going to be loyal and kind of see it out as far as he can take it.
I agree, and I think it helps that he is there at his current age too, because he's not going to necessarily need to be a mover and a shaker. And if you're not that in the beginning, this is the first Power 5 job that he got. This is he'd been waiting for this as a head coach. Obviously, he coached at Alabama, but this is the first job in the Big Ten, a conference like that, and I think he's really trying to repay them for what they did for him, because none of these other teams took a shot at him. I still marvel at that, but they didn't. And now it's a match made in heaven, and it's working out really well. So I want to talk about your college team after the break too, because I got to get your take on that new hire. But Jacob, we appreciate you coming on and going through this draft with us and all of the coverage that you give us. You're one of our superstars on the show, and we appreciate you coming on the show. And tell people where they can follow you for all of the coverage here.
Yeah, you find me on socials, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Jacob Westendorf. I'm real creative with my handle there. I do like a stock report after every Packers game. I do a report card right after the game is over, so I kind of grade each phase of the game. So pass offense, rush offense, all the way down the line, kind of how that went for the team. And then I do some stuff during the week. So if you want to know thine enemy, for example, on Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll have something that comes out previewing Green Bay's matchup with Chicago, which is who they play. They play the Bears a week from Sunday at Lambeau, which now that game is for first place in the NFC North with today's performance. So that's a big one, and that's where most of my stuff goes. So Thank you guys for having me. Obviously, I appreciate it, and hopefully we can maybe we'll get a divisional round game at Lambeau Field or something like that here in January.
That would be nice. Yeah, that's going to be easier on the Green Bay side, but like you laid out. But hopefully Detroit can put it together, put a few wins together here. But we'll plan on talking to you again either way, and we appreciate you joining the show.
Yeah, thank you guys. Go Blue.
Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate it. Thanks to Jacob Westendorf. Appreciate his takes here and participating in the Thanksgiving draft. We'll get the takes here on people's teams and how they feel like they did on the Thanksgiving draft. And yeah, the one thing I want to do, we talked about my alma mater, we talked about Jacob's team, but we got to talk about Shayne's alma mater and the new coach that they hired. So stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. I realized I was remiss in not updating the last pick from my mom. She did Kirk Herbstreit as her analyst, a newer pick. I like that one. He's now he's doing pro games, he's doing college games, so good pick there. So I want to see how we're feeling about our teams. Shayne, I feel like you said you basically got chalk there. You got all your picks that you wanted out of the Thanksgiving draft, it sounds like.
Yes, yeah, everything that I thought I was if I could have written it down without anyone else picking, I got everything across the board. So it's going to be a very good imaginary meal.
I like it. What about you, Dan? How did you do?
I got everything I wanted except for the sides. I would have went mac and cheese and mashed potatoes. I'm not Mr. Keto. I probably should be, but I'm not.
Yeah. Shayne's doing better than us on that front. But I want to talk to Shayne about his college team before we get out of here, because you basically kind of foretold this a little bit. You were talking about how on the first show how they were trying to Virginia Tech was trying to give a top 10 package offer to James Franklin. I'm sure there were a lot of teams that were lining up at that particular table, but he chose Virginia Tech, and I'm curious to get your takes on it here.
I think as an alumni, I'm very happy with that pick. I think he's done a great job at Penn State. Everyone wants to say, but he didn't win the big games. It's hard, especially when you're in a conference with Ohio State and Michigan, and yeah, you might not win all the big games, but you're going to go to a school that the fan base loves the school. The atmosphere is electric. It's a place that's hungry and has proven that they have been there and that they can be there and compete. In a market where you're paying coaches multi-millions of dollars, Virginia Tech hasn't been the school to produce that. They've recently decided they are going to be that school to do that. They've recently decided to up the ante on their NIL fund. So they've raised a ton of NIL money to try to compete with these other schools. And it's a shame that that's what it's turned into and that's a factor. But you have to have talent. And you can have all the heart in the world. You can have all the culture. You can have all the scheme and all of that. But you've got to have big, strong guys that are able to perform at a very high level. And then you've also got to be able to pull those guys together and have them buy into your culture so that you can have sustainable success versus flash in the pan, winning seasons and things like that. We had that under Frank Beamer. Now, he didn't get it overnight. There were fans that wanted him gone in his first start of his tenure, but he eventually started building that team up. A culture was created. He became a special teams icon. They call it Beamer ball every time somebody blocks a kick or anything or returns a kick or anything like that. I think they've been keeping that as a part of the culture, and I think where we had Brent Pry come in may not have ended up being a great head coach, but I think he was great culture-wise. I think he was great across the board, except for some of the commander-in-chief type things that had to kind of come along with that. But he came from Coach Franklin's staff on Penn State. No, I don't know if they're going to retain him as a coordinator or not, but I think he has an understanding because he's close with Brent. He has an understanding of what that culture is. And I think that when he gets a chance to try to bring his, very tight relationship, player coach type, players coach type mentality, but also bring accountability, that's when you get players that they treat the way that they perform and they work and they behave as if I don't want to let down my coach. And that's how, I kind of felt like when I was at home growing up, like I didn't want to let down my dad by doing something stupid or not trying hard enough or whatever. And when you can get a coach that it's not just a mean coach that you're like afraid to screw up for, it's a coach that you're intrinsically motivated without them telling you to because you don't want to let them down. And I think that's what he's going to bring to the table.
It'll be an interesting story to follow. I appreciate you getting your take on that, and we'll be following it on the show here. But I appreciate everybody tuning in to us on Thanksgiving. Thanks for coming in, Dan and Shayne. This was a fun show to do, and we gave everybody some football coverage here while they're processing their food and their turkey and whatever they ended up eating here. But I want to thank our sponsors real quick: Encore Business Group, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Williams Chiropractic, Elite Winning Solutions, and Sales Complete Home Painting and Handyman Services. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to tune in to us next week from 7 to 9. And thanks for kicking it with Shayne and I. Until then, happy Thanksgiving and have a good evening.